Welcome back, Muses. I hope that everyone is having an awesome day. I am tired and over all the things because all the things are dumb.
Yeah, they are.
Everything is crazy right now, and I know that pretty much everybody that I know is in agreement with that, so it's not just me. So that's nice. So yeah, shit's crazy.
There's another Friday the 13th coming up.
There is. Yeah, that's fun. At least I excuse a lot of the crazy on that day, but usually that day is just fun. So there's that. So this is going to be released on old St. Patrick's Day. So we're going to do some touching on some stuff with that.
I got a Cryptid Quickie today.
Yeah, we have a cryptid. That's kind of exciting. It's been a hot minute. All right, so I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about St. Patrick. However, it's not going to be the typical St. Patrick story and all of that. So it's going to be a little different. You guys know that I don't generally do the overly saturated things. So I'm going to do something a little different with it. So we're going to start with the land before the storm. Before he was a saint, before he was a legend, before he drove out the serpents and walked with kings and chieftains, he was simply a boy named Macabre.Musings, and the world he knew was already dying. The Roman Empire was shrinking, its borders cracking like old stone. On the western edge of that faded world lay a small coastal settlement in Britain, quiet, unremarkable, and unaware that its peace was about to be shattered. Who was St. Patrick? A young Maywin, 16, walks along the shoreline. He is not devout, not disciplined, not remarkable. He is the son of a deacon, grandson of a priest, but faith is a distant thing to him, something for older men in cold churches. He lived comfortably, sheltered by his family's status, but comfort breeds softness, and softness invites fate. A storm gathers on the horizon, not of weather, but of men. The Irish raiders strike like wolves. Torches blaze, screams cut through the dark. Maywin is dragged from his home, thrown onto a ship, bound for a land he's never seen before. He was not taken for ransom. He was taken for labor, for ownership, for a life that would break most men. The ship sails into the Black Sea. Ireland is wild, ancient, and unforgiving. Maywin is sold to a chieftain and sent to tend sheep on the cold hills of Antrim. There, in the endless rain and wind, he learned hunger. He learned loneliness. He learned fear. And in that fear, something else awakened. Maywin begins to pray, first out of desperation, and then out of habit, and then out of conviction. He prays hundreds of times a day. He had been a boy without purpose. Now he was a slave with a calling. 6 years have passed by then. But then, Maywin dreams. A voice calls to him. Your ship is ready. He wakes trembling, but he knows what he must do. Maywin flees, traveling nearly 200 miles on foot. He hides from patrols, sleeps in ditches, steals scraps to survive. He reaches a distant port. A ship waits. The captain refuses him, then, strangely, changed his mind. Some say it was chance. Others say it was providence. The ship sails. Storms batter them. They wander lost for weeks. But eventually, he returns home. His family embraces him weeping. They beg him never to leave them again. But Maywin dreams once more. Holy boy, come and walk among us again. The voice of the Irish people were calling to him. Maywin studies. He learns scripture, learns discipline, and learns leadership. He takes a new name, Patricius, or Patrick. He becomes a priest, then a bishop, and then he makes the decision that shocks everyone. He will return to Ireland, not as a slave, but as a shepherd of the souls. The return to the land that held him. Patrick steps onto Irish soil once more, But the land he returns to is not the land he fled. It is older, wilder, filled with stories whispered in the dark. Ireland was a land of druids, spirits, and ancient gods, a land where the veil between the worlds was thin, and Patrick walked into it armed with only his faith. This is the fun part. I wanted to focus on the things that weren't talked about too awful much. So the legends and the lore that often gets left out. So this is the dark heart of the story. So we're going to start with the encounter on the cliff right after he returned. The wind off the western sea is cold enough to sting, carrying the smell of salt and storm. Patrick's cloak snaps behind him like a banner, its edges soaked from the long climb. He plants his staff in the earth, oak and worn smooth by years of travel. Below the cliff, the ground seems to be alive. Serpents coil over one another in a heaving mass, scales glinting like wet iron. They are not natural creatures. Their eyes burn with a strange intelligence, and their bodies twist in shapes that defy the clean lines of creation. Some are small as eels, others thick as tree trunks. All hiss in a chorus that vibrates through the stones beneath his feet. Patrick feels the weight of the moment. Not fear. He has known fear before, but the gravity of the land resisting change. The serpents are not merely beasts, they are the last defiance of an old world. Patrick lifts his staff, and the sky answers. Clouds churn overhead, thick and bruised with storms. A single crack of thunder splits the air, echoes across cliffs like the breaking of chains. The serpents recoil, their bodies nodding in panic. Patrick speaks, not loudly, but with the clarity that cuts through the wind. His words are prayer, command, and compassion woven together. He does not curse the serpents. He does not hate them. He simply calls them to leave. And the ground trembles. The serpents begin to move, not toward him, but away. They slither in frantic waves toward the edge of the cliff, tumbling over one another in their haste. Some try to cling to the rocks, but the storm wind tears them loose. One by one, they fall into the sea. The water churns as they vanish beneath the waves, swallowed by the deep. The storm begins to ease. Light breaks through the clouds in thin golden strands. Patrick lowers his staff. His shoulders sag, not from exhaustion, but from release. The land feels different now, quieter, as though a long-held breath has finally been exhaled. The tale is not about reptiles, it's about transformation. The land moving from fear to hope. A people stepping out of old darkness into new light. A man confronting not monsters, but the spiritual weight of a nation. The serpents were never meant to be literal. They were the shape of everything Ireland needed to let go of, and everything Patrick was called to help it become. Asking Irish people if that's how they feel. Generally speaking, you're going to get an absolutely not, but alas. So I am focusing on some of the experiences that he had when he came back, such as the creatures and critters that he encountered. So, other than the serpents, of course, we are going to start out with Sheen, which is the son of Finn MacCool, who had vanished centuries earlier into Tirnanog, the land of youth. When he finally returned to Ireland, he found a land utterly changed. His father and the Fianna, long gone, the old forts in ruins, and a new faith spreading across the island. The people he met were small and frail compared to the warriors he once knew. The songs they sang were not of hunting, feasting, and battle, but of saints' salvation and the world to come. His return was already a wound. The Ireland he loved had passed into legend. St. Patrick encountered Sheen as an old man, aged instantly when he fell from his enchanted horse and touched mortal soil. Patrick recognized him not as a curiosity, but as a living relic of Ireland's pagan past. Sheen, in turn, saw Patrick as the embodiment of everything that had replaced his world. Their first exchanges were cautious. Patrick spoke gently, urging Sheen to accept the Christian faith so that his soul might be saved. Sheen answered with the pride of a Fenian warrior, insisting that the Fianna needed no salvation. They lived honorably, defended the weak, and upheld truth and loyalty. What God could command more? This tension between heroic virtue and Christian doctrine became the heart of their dialogue. Sheen recounted the glories of the Fianna feasts, where a quarter of a blackbird was larger than any beef Patrick's monks could possibly offer. Hunts where the world itself seemed larger and wilder. Battles where courage was the only prayer needed. These were not boasts about laments. He was trying to make Patrick understand the scale of the world he had lost. In Lady Gregory's retelling, Sheen even mocks the meager food of Patrick's household, comparing it unfavorably to the abundance of the feast. Patrick, offended, accuses him of lying, unable to imagine a world so grand. Patrick countered with theology. The Fenians' deeds, however noble, could not grant eternal life. Pagan heroism was admirable, but incomplete. Only through Christ could Sheen find salvation. He urged Sheen to abandon the old ways, to see them as shadows of the truth that now revealed. Sheen's resistance was not stubbornness, it was grief. To accept Patrick's worldview meant admitting that the Fianna, his father, and all he loved were not only gone, but spiritually lost. He could not bear that thought. Their debate was not just about religion, it was about memory, identity, and the meaning of life lived before a new order arrived. The encounter symbolized a broader cultural shift. Sheen represents the heroic, mythic Ireland, rooted in honor, physical strength, and the natural world. Patrick represents the Christian, literate, monastic Ireland, rooted in spiritual salvation, humility, and moral law. Folklore often frames their dialogue as respectful and irreconcilable. Sheen cannot accept a heaven where Fianna are absent, and Patrick cannot accept a worldview where valor alone is enough. This tension is echoed in modern interpretations that describe the meeting as a, quote, battle of beliefs between the land of youth and the land of saints. In most versions, Sheen remains with Patrick but never fully converts. He is fed, sheltered, and listened to, but he is also pitied, an old man out of time. Patrick tries to comfort him, but Sheen's heart is always with the Fianna. He dies, still longing for the world that he lost, and Patrick prays for his soul. Some traditions say Patrick's prayers save him. Others say Sheen's loyalty to the Fianna keeps him forever apart from the Christian heaven. The ambiguity is part of the tale's power. This encounter resonates because it captures a universal moment, the passing of an old world into a new one. It is not a simple victory of Christianity over paganism, nor a condemnation of either side. Instead, it is a poignant conversation between two men who each embody a different truth. Sheen teaches Patrick about the nobility of the past, and Patrick teaches Sheen about the hope of the future. Neither fully convinces each other, and that unresolved tension is what makes the story seem pretty real. So his next encounter that we come across is the Druids. St. Patrick's confrontation with the Druids at Tara is one of the most dramatic episodes in early Irish Christian tradition. What survives in the medieval sources is already half legend, half history, so expanding it into a fuller, more atmospheric narrative fits naturally with how the story has always been told. So now we have a richly detailed retelling that stays faithful to the traditional elements while deepening the characters, settings, and tensions. So the Hill of Tara was the symbolic heart of Ireland, the seat of the High King, center of ritual, and a place where druids, nobles, warriors, and poets gathered for festivals. On the night before Beltane, the entire island was meant to sit in darkness until the royal fire was lit at Tara. Only then could other fires be kindled. This was not just custom, it was a sacred law. To violate it was to challenge the spiritual authority of the Druids and the political authority of the High King. If anybody remembers when we were talking about I believe it was in our Halloween episode where they light the torches from the main fire and take it to their home and light their fires. So they're all lit from the same fire. So this is kind of the same thing, just for a different purpose. So this was something that they did for probably most of their rituals and festivities. So Patrick chose this night deliberately. As dusk fell, Patrick and his companions climbed the slopes of the hill of Slain, visible from Tara. The wind was cold and the grass whispered like an omen. Patrick planted his staff in the earth and prayed aloud, invoking the god he served. When the fire caught, it rose bright and steady, far brighter than a small missionary band should have been able to produce. The flames seemed to resist the wind, standing upright like a pillar. At Tara, the druids saw it immediately. Some cried out in anger, others in fear. The chief druid, Lochru, is said to have warned the High King, if that fire is not quenched tonight, it will never be put out in Ireland. The king ordered his guards to seize the stranger who dared to defy the ancient rites. Patrick did not wait to be dragged before the king. At dawn, he walked directly toward Tara with his followers, chanting hymns. The druids lined the path, their cloaks dark against the morning mist, their staffs carved with symbols of their craft. Inside the royal hall, the atmosphere was tense. Warriors gripped their spears, nobles whispered. The king sat rigid in his throne, uncertain whether he faced a madman, a sorcerer, or something else entirely. Patrick entered without bowing. His confidence unsettled everybody. Lochru stepped forward first. He invoked the old gods, calling on winds and spirits to strike Patrick down. The hall darkened, and a sudden gust extinguished every single torch. Patrick raised his hand and prayed. The wind ceased instantly. The torches relit themselves, according to the legend, as though the fire leapt back onto them. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Another druid offered Patrick a cup of poison, claiming it was a gesture of hospitality. Patrick blessed it, and the liquid separated, poison sinking to the bottom, harmless water rising to the top. He drank the water and handed the cup back untouched. The king's warriors shifted uneasily. To prove their own power, the druids proposed a trial. 2 men would be placed in a hut, one wearing Patrick's cloak, one wearing a druid's cloak. The hut would be set ablaze. Whichever man survived would reveal whose god was stronger. Patrick agreed, but insisted on choosing the men. He placed his own cloak on a young pagan volunteer and the druid's cloak on one of the druids. When the hut burned, the man wearing Patrick's cloak emerged unharmed. The druid wearing his own cloak was consumed by flames. The hall erupted in total chaos. The High King, Leary, was proud and weary. He did not convert that day, but he recognized that Patrick's power, whether divine or simply beyond his understanding, could not be dismissed. He granted Patrick permission to preach throughout Ireland, a decision that would reshape the island's spiritual landscape forever. Some nobles converted immediately, others followed in the months and years to come. The Druids, once unquestioned, found their influence challenged by a new kind of holy man, one who wielded the faith instead of the ritual, the prayer instead of the incantation. This story, preserved in medieval texts like the Vita Sancti Patrici, is not just a tale of magical duels. It reflects, one, a clash of worldviews, Christian monotheism meeting the ritual, nature-based spirituality of the Druids. Two, a political negotiation. Patrick needed the king's permission to preach. The king needed to maintain his authority. Three, a symbolic victory. The fire on Slain represented a new light rising in Ireland, one that would not be extinguished. Whether taken literally or metaphorically, the encounter at Tara marks the moment Patrick's mission became completely unstoppable. Okay, so now we've been through Tara, and we know how he gained permission for his preaching, and this is where we start kind of encountering some new things. So now I'm going to tell you about the spirits of the hills. So Patrick had been walking since dawn, following a narrow deer path that wound upward through the heather. The hills of Northern Ireland rose around him like sleeping giants, their slopes wrapped in a morning mist. He had come seeking solitude for prayer, but the land itself seemed to be watching him, listening, even more alive than any wildlife he had known. By midday, the wind had shifted. It carried a low, resonant hum. Not quite a voice, not quite the sound of stone settling. Patrick paused. The air thickened, and the mist ahead of him began to coil and gather as though drawn by an unseen hand. From the swirling veil stepped a figure. The being was neither man nor beast. Its form shimmered like heat above a fire, shaped from wind, stone, and the faint green glow of moss after a rain. His eyes were deep-set hollows lit with an ancient, patient light. When it spoke, the sound was layered. Wind through grass, water over rock, and the echoes of something older than language entirely. Stranger of the southern seas, it said, why do you tread on the bones of my people? Patrick felt the weight of this question. He bowed his head, not in fear, but in respect. I walk where God leads me, he answered. These hills belong to the one who shaped all things. The spirit's form rippled, as though amused or even offended. It was impossible to tell. The spirit circled him, its presence stirring the heather in a slow, slow spiral. Long before your God crossed the waters, it murmured, I guarded these heights. I watched the tribes rise and fall. I taught them the names of the winds and the paths of the stars. And now you come with new words, new laws, and new fire. Patrick met his gaze. I come with peace, but I will not turn back. The hill grew quiet. Even the birds were still. The spirit's voice deepened. Then show me this peace. Show me this fire. Patrick knelt on the stony ground and began to pray out loud. His voice was steady and shaped by years of hardship and faith. As he prayed, a soft radiance gathered around him, not blinding, not forceful, but warm, like the first light of spring after a long winter. The spirit recoiled at first, its form flickering, but then it leaned closer, drawn to the warmth. This light, it whispered, it does not seek to conquer. It seeks to heal, Patrick replied. After a long moment, the spirit was silent. The wind eased, the mist thinned, and the hills seemed to exhale. The spirit straightened, its form becoming more defined, almost human, but not quite. Very well, Patrick of the Western Isles. Walk these hills and speak your truths. But remember, this land has a memory older than your scriptures. Honor it, and it will honor you. And Patrick nodded. I will. The spirit stepped back into the mist, dissolving into the landscape as though it were never separated from it. But the hills felt different now, less watchful, more welcoming. Patrick continued his climb, knowing he had not conquered anything. He had simply been acknowledged. What is significant about this encounter? It frames Patrick not as a conqueror, but as a respectful outsider entering a land with its own sacred history. The spirit represents Ireland's pre-Christian identity, its landscape, its folklore, and its ancient wisdom. Their meeting becomes a symbolic passing of the torch, not erasure, but transformation. It reflects the blending of Christian and Celtic traditions that shaped Irish spirituality for centuries. So I'm going to kind of go over just a little bit more about him. What was his purpose? What were we doing? And all that. So just to kind of close this part out. So his mission. Patrick travels across Ireland for decades. He baptizes thousands of people, converts kings, builds churches, writes letters, fights despair, survives assassination attempts, endures betrayals. He was not a man of peace. He was a man of absolute purpose. So that was his mission. That's why he came back. That was what he was doing here. So the finale. St. Patrick is believed to have died on March 17th, 461 AD. This date, of course, became his feast day and the global celebration that we know today. He passed away in Saul, County Down, in Northern Ireland. This location is deeply symbolic. Saul was the site of his first church, allegedly built in a barn gifted to him by a local chieftain named Dichu. It's a poetic full circle moment for a man who spent decades converting the island. The legend of his burial, and this is pretty fascinating. According to the Annals of the Four Masters, a dispute broke out after his death. Two different groups, the Enel and the Ariella, both wanted the honor of burying the saint in their own territory. To prevent a bloody battle over his remains, a miracle supposedly occurred. 2 ox carts were prepared, each pulled by 2 unnamed oxen. A body, or what appeared to be one, was placed in each cart. The oxen went in different directions, and both groups believed they had the real St. Patrick. In reality, his remains were widely believed to be interred at Down Cathedral in Downpatrick. I would like to know what happened when they got to where they were going. So, the silent death, which will be our conclusion. Unlike his adventurous life, which involved kidnapping, slavery, and legendary confrontations with druids, his death was relatively quiet. He spent his final years in retirement, focused on prayer and writing. His most famous work, the Confessio, was written toward the end of his life and serves as a humble defense of his mission in Ireland. In the Christian tradition, a saint's feast day is usually the day they died, not the day they were born. This is because it is considered their heavenly birthday, the day they transitioned from the earthly realm into the divine. And that, Muses, is the story of St. Patrick and his adventure. In my next segment, after Amy, I will go over how St. Patrick's Day came to be here in the modern days.
That's kind of, I don't think I knew any of those things. When we were in school, we learned that he drove out the snakes.
Yeah,
They
well, and that's why I
believe in
kind of wanted
snakes.
to do it, because that's basically all I've ever really known too. And if you
Mhm.
hear even Irish people that tell the story, which they didn't care for him a whole lot anyway,
Right.
some of them, well, most of them anyway, to hear them tell it, that's pretty much it. It was just the snakes, which of course we learned, of course, was not snakes really, but whatever. But I knew that, but didn't realize all of the creatures and things that he encountered.
Yeah, he had some fun and some misadventures and whatnot.
Right? He did some stuff. He went on a whole D&D campaign.
Oh my God.
Right?
TM. I am going to just hope and pray that I am saying this right, even with my pronunciation key. And then I also forgot to put some pronunciation keys in. So please forgive me. I have written them down on this piece of paper, and I'm still probably going to say them wrong because I can't find a pronunciation for a last name. My story today is about the Dower Coot. I hope I am saying that correctly. It is spelled Dobhar-CHU with the little thingy over top of it. And it translates to water hound or water dog. Sometimes it's referred to as king otter or master otter. Now, for me, when I hear the word water dog, it's one word, like a compound word. So whenever they did the translation for it, it's water and dog, or water and hounds, 2 different words. So I read water dog and thought of water dogs, which is an aquatic salamander. Do you know are you familiar with them at all?
Yes.
So if for those of you who have never heard of those things, if you have a freshwater spring, and you probably do if you live in Holler somewhere, have a freshwater spring, you know that your water is good and safe to drink if you find water dogs in it. It sort of look like they sort of look like axolotls. They're
Yeah,
similar to
I think they're in the same family.
they sort of are, yeah. They're similar to a hellbender. So the difference is an axolotl stays in that state always. A water dog, what is the word I'm looking for?
Evolve.
They evolve into a salamander, and I think it's the tiger salamander. And then the hellbender, it goes through like a metamorphosis, but it goes through a change, but it still stays the same. Like there's
Yeah.
something to do with the gills,
Yeah.
but it stays in that axolotl state. Anyway, so that was your a snot otter is another word you might hear a hellbender called, which is disgusting.
Ew.
But anyway, I just random hillbilly facts, y'all. Described as a giant aggressive otter-hound hybrid, it inhabits deep lakes, bogs, and remote waterways across Ireland and parts of Scotland. According to Celtic water lore, lakes and rivers are liminal and dangerous spaces. Loch Ness, for example, as the Loch Ness Monster. A very unusual historical artifact exists in relation to this cryptid. It's a gravestone in County Leitrim, I hope I said that right, for a woman named Grace, please forgive me, McLaughlin, I'm pretty sure. Grace McLaughlin. We'll get to her shortly. Witnesses and folklore descriptions are very consistent for the Dowarcoo, a hybrid of otter and dog with a sleek otter body and a dog-like head. About 7 feet long, and older stories say boat length, so I'm thinking like a John boat. It has fur that is said to be dark in color and armor-like and magical. Powerful jaws and sharp teeth make it capable of killing livestock and humans. We'll get to that. It has a long, muscular tail used for propulsion. It has extraordinary speed, a piercing cry, described as a scream or a whistle, and some accounts say it is so strong it can smash rocks with its head. Also, if you look this thing up, it's kind of adorable. You're welcome. The Dowarcoo is portrayed as highly aggressive, attacking humans, dogs, and livestock. They're vengeful, known to retaliate if one is killed. They hunt in mating pairs. The mate emerges if the first one is harmed. Territorial apex predator, dominating lakes and rivers, and a liminal being moving between land and water with ease. There are some documented sightings of this creature. The earliest written reference to the Dowarcoo type creature is Broderick O'Flaherty's account, referred to in A Description of West Connaught, 1648. He's the author in that account and not a witness, but there is an account given in that. Now, the second one is where the headstone comes in, as well as his human death. The death of Grace McLaughlin, which is in, I hope I'm saying this right, Glenade Lake in County Leitrim on September 24th, 1722. It depicts a hound-like creature pierced by a sword, widely interpreted as the Dowarcoo. I wanted to find an accurate telling of the story, and I chose this one, which I found on www.firesidehorror.co.uk under the blog section. It's a really cool website, by the way. In the year 1722, Grace McLaughlin, known locally by her maiden name, Grace Connolly, lived in the town of Creevely near Glenadloe, which means lake. One afternoon, she went down to the lake to wash some clothes. When she failed to return that evening, her husband, Terence, went looking for her and discovered her mutilated body by the water, the Dowarcoo sleeping on top of her. He ran home, collected his knife, and crept up on the beast, slaying it. As the thing died, it let out a whistling yell to its mate, who soon rose from the lake and chased after poor Terence. In desperation, he sought the aid of a friend, and fortifying a local farmhouse, they fought and eventually killed the second beast. I read that the chase of the second one ended in Cashel, and that's about a 14 to 16 mile walk, according to the Google Maps, and would take about 5 or 6 hours. unless he took a completely different path than what I was able to find. I'm very confused. I mean, can you imagine chasing that thing all day?
Mm-mm.
I'm going to go on with some more sightings, and I'm going to come back just briefly to that headstone. So the third sighting, or well, sightings, I guess, between 1920 and 1925, some fishermen in Northwest Ireland reported seeing a large otter-like creature surfacing and diving rapidly. It was described as larger than any known otter and moving unnaturally fast. On to sighting number 4. In about 1952, two Mennonite boys claimed they saw a large, dark serpentine creature in the water. One of the boys fired a .22 rifle at it, but the creature was unfazed. Remember, he's got that armor fur. They described it as long, fast, and eel or otter-like. And this is one of the few sightings that ever involved an attempted shot. For our 5th sighting, we're in 1963. A local resident saw a giant otter-like animal surface briefly before diving and noted its unusual size and speed. In 1968, in a lake in Northwest Ireland, it's never real specific about which lakes usually, a witness claimed to have seen a creature longer than a dog with smooth, dark fur that moved like an arrow through the water. So he pretty fast. In 1975, in West Ireland, a witness saw a dog-headed, otter-bodied creature. The witness also said it was larger than any otter they had ever seen. In 2000, at Streamstown Bay in Omi Island, Connemara, a local reported a dark creature moving quickly in the water. It was described as otter-like, but far too large. Well, let's go back to Grace's headstone. Did you, Bambi, get a chance to look at it?
No.
Okay. The only legible text on the stone is the following. This stone was erected by Terence McLaughlin in memory of his wife, Grace McLaughlin, who departed this life September 24th, 1722. But there is this depiction, and it's a relief carving that it's supposedly related to the Dobhar. I'm just curious what everybody else, what all of you muses and you, Bambi, see whenever you look at it. I want you to tell me what you see. So while she's doing that, but I want everybody to look up this headstone. And I would love to know, just hit us up on our socials or send an email and let us know what it is you see. Bambi just now saw the picture and her face says, question mark? Do you see the relief carving?
Yeah.
So that is supposedly a depiction of the Dobhar with a sword going through it.
No.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Like, I understand it's going to be worn from weather.
Yeah. But
I'm just not seeing it.
not even a little bit.
I don't see it.
I don't see it at all. No.
So that relief carving, there's no proof of anything.
Her husband's grave slab has a carving of him with a dagger in hand on a horse. That ain't a horse either.
Send me that.
What in the hell?
Well, if that's a horse, that's a Clydesdale.
That's what I was gonna say. But like,
his leg it's showing his legs hanging down. That's not helping the situation.
It's not, because at first I was like, he's standing beside the horse, and why is he that large and the horse is that long? And like, I don't understand what's happening there. But then I realized no, because it says he's on the horse. Anyway, that man ain't on a horse, and I don't know what that's supposed to be with hers, because that's also not very good. I will have several pictures for everybody of each of these things. So,
and I can read 1920 something on his stone, and that's all I can read. Anyway, so yeah, let us know what you think that looks like. An otter dog.
I mean, yeah, like I said, I'm all about some adorable, vicious creatures. They just have to be cute. All right. We're both learning some stuff today. I've never heard of that thing, and now I'm very glad that I have because the hell. um, and I have seen pictures, depictions of it, and those are freaking cool. Well, now we're going to move on, and I'm going to talk to you more about the St. Patrick's Day, more about where it came from as far as how we here in the U.S. got St. Patrick's Day. It's a bit of a historical plot twist, but St. Patrick's Day as we know it, the parades, the green beer, the massive parties, and actually it was invented in America, not Ireland. In Ireland, the day was a somber religious feast. It wasn't until Irish immigration to America that the colonies with those Irish immigrants wanted to connect to their roots, and it transformed into the boisterous celebration that we have today. So here's a little about that. So number one, the very first parades. Surprisingly, the first recorded St. Patrick's Day parade didn't happen in Dublin, but in St. Augustine, Florida in 1601, organized by an Irish vicar named Ricardo Arter. Later, as the 13 colonies grew more official, traditions took root. Boston, 1737, the Charitable Irish Society organized the first celebration in the colonies, a modest dinner to help poor Irish immigrants. New York City in 1762, Irish soldiers serving in the British Army held a parade to help cure their homesickness, which I like that story way better. Because they were in the military, they had the pipes and drums that became a staple of the holidays. So, number two, a tool for political power. In the mid 1800s, millions of Irish immigrants fled to the U.S. during the Great Famine. They faced intense prejudice and were often depicted as rowdy or un American. The Irish realized that if they marched in massive numbers, they could show off their strength. The St. Patrick's Day Parade became a political show of force. By the late 1800s, Irish Americans became a powerful voting bloc, often called the Green Machine, and politicians began showing up to parades to win their favors. So, number three, the shift from a holy day to holiday. In Ireland, until the 1970s, the law actually required pubs to be closed on March 17th because it was a strict religious day. In America, it went the opposite direction. It became a secular celebration of Irishness that eventually welcomed everyone. This led to some iconic and very, very American traditions, such as corned beef and cabbage. In Ireland, they traditionally ate salt pork or bacon. In America, the cheapest meat available in Jewish delis was corned beef, so the immigrants swapped it out. Dyeing the river green. This started in Chicago in 1962 when sanitization workers used green dye to trace illegal sewage discharges and realized it looked festive. Wearing green, originally the color associated with St. Patrick's Day was blue. Green only became popular in the 18th century as a symbol of Irish nationalism for the Emerald Isle and the clover. So here's a quick comparison in the Irish roots and the American. We're going to start with the whole vibe of the situation. With Irish roots, it was, of course, religious and holy. As we said, the day was actually, everything was shut down. It was a very, very religious holiday. In the American version, it was very secular and it was a big party. The main event for St. Patrick's Day in Ireland, as far as the roots go, they had mass and family feasts. In America, we have massive public parades because, right, and lots and lots and lots of alcohol. The main dish, as I said, in Ireland was soft pork or bacon. Here it was the corned beef because immigration and it was cheaper. And then, of course, the drink in Ireland was tea or stout, and it was had at home with your family feast. And in America, it was green beer in public pubs or, in the streets, wherever it is you just happen to land. That's a little bit of a comparison. And then Ireland eventually re-imported the American version of the holiday in the 1990s to boom tourism, which is why Dublin now has a festival that rivals New York's, and they absolutely hate it, like a whole lot. So there you go. St. Patty's Day here in America.
Our missing moment today. I'm doing a little bit longer than I have been. I have more than just a missing person flyer this time. This is for Brittany M. Duff, aka Brittany Horn. Brittany went missing from Kermit in Mingo County, West Virginia in June of 2022. She was 32 years old. Please know that I have checked several sources and gathered what I think is the accurate information. There are some discrepancies. Brittany is described as a white female, 6'1", 120 to 130 pounds, brown hair, blue eyes. She does have some distinguishing tattoos. She has Spark on her neck, her children's names on her wrist, and a star on her stomach. She was last seen wearing a pink shirt, jean shorts, white and green sneakers, sunglasses, a gold chain and bracelets, and carrying a tan backpack. She was born on Sunday, October 29th, 1989, to Mary and Paul Horn. She has 2 older siblings and was pretty close with her older brother. She was a 2008 graduate of Tulsa High School in Fort Gay, Wayne County, West Virginia. Brittany, a mother of 4, had recently entered a treatment program and was working on getting her life together. She had inherited a home from her father and was planning to start her new life in that house, but shortly before she disappeared, it was destroyed by a suspicious fire. She stayed with her mother after the fire and was still staying there at the time of her disappearance. On the evening of June 12, 2022, Brittany left her mother's home on foot, headed to a friend's house. On June 13th, Brittany was seen leaving a house on the 1500 block of Jennings Creek Road wearing a white shirt and jeans, carrying a backpack. Now, if you were paying attention, those are not the clothes she was last seen wearing. Brittany didn't have a phone or vehicle at the time of her disappearance. She contacted a friend via Facebook using someone else's account, saying she would be home in a few hours. She later left a voicemail for a friend using someone else's phone, saying she was in Louisa, Kentucky. Brittany seemed frantic, and that call may have been a call for help. One of her friends admitted to having given her a ride to Louisa. Now, depending on which way you go, that's only about a 35 or 45-minute drive. That voicemail was her final communication with friends or family, and there have been no confirmed sightings of Brittany since. Brittany typically maintained regular contact with her family, especially her brother. She was described as being an actively involved mother. On June 23rd, 10 days after any friends or family had contact with her, Brittany's mother reported her missing to the West Virginia State Police. Her family also went to Kentucky to make an additional report. They even canvassed the area themselves, hoping that someone had seen her. If you have any information regarding the disappearance of Brittany Duff, please contact the West Virginia State Police, 304-235-6000. And if you would please share her missing persons flyers, you can find those on our socials.
That seems like an odd chain of events.
It does.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We will post those up with the show notes. So make sure and share those out if you can, please, and thank you. That one's not brand new. So I feel like a lot of those kind of get held back a little bit after some time. They're not shared out quite as much. So I like to make sure and send those out a little more often.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's going to be it for us this time. I hope that you learned something new today. We did. Which is fun. We love learning things. And don't forget to give us a like and subscribe wherever it is that you listen to us. YouTube, Facebook, any of those. We got the TikTok, the X, and of course our Patreon. So check us out on our Facebook as always for pics and show notes, any updates, and anything else that we pop up on there. It's holiday things. We have creepy stuff that I find, and I'll throw that in. We have updates on cases that we cover sometimes. I keep up on it pretty good. The last couple of weeks, just much like all of our episodes, have been absolute chaos, and I have not been keeping up with everything as much. But I do post updates. Like if I'm going to be late putting something out or something's going on, I let you know. so that you're not over there looking around for it and saying, where the hell's it at? I'll let you know.
And we'll share those on our personals as well.
Yes. As always, you can reach out to us at Macabre.Musings.Podcast@gmail.com.
Tune in next time as we dive into more dark and creepy lore, and maybe tumble down a rabbit hole or two. Until then, keep your light steady, your curiosity is restless, and your wits about you. The good folk love a wanderer.
And we will see y'all later.